"Grandma, Tyler and I need $50,000 for our wedding. You have Grandpa's life insurance money sitting there. This is for your grandson's happiness." Those were the words that came out of Brittany's perfectly glossed lips as she sat across from me in my living room that Tuesday afternoon, her manicured hand resting possessively on my grandson Tyler's knee. She said it with such confidence, such entitlement, as if my deceased husband's life insurance policy existed specifically to fund her Instagram-worthy wedding fantasies. I looked at Tyler, my sweet grandson who I'd raised from age 12 after his parents died in that horrible car crash. The boy who used to help me bake cookies every Sunday. The young man who was now 28 and looking at me with hopeful eyes, completely under this woman's spell. He said nothing. He just nodded slightly, as if agreeing that, yes, his grandmother should absolutely hand over $50,000 because his fiancée demanded it. I took a slow sip of my tea, letting the silence stretch just long enough to see Brittany's smile tighten at the corners. Then I said something that surprised even myself. I said yes. I told them I would think about it seriously, that I wanted Tyler to be happy, that I understood how important a wedding was. Brittany's face lit up like she'd just won the lottery. She jumped up from the couch and hugged me, and I could smell her expensive perfume, the kind that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. She whispered in my ear, "Thank you, Grandma Rose. You won't regret this. You'll have the best seat at the most beautiful wedding Connecticut has ever seen." Tyler hugged me too, but his hug felt different. Mechanical. As if he were going through motions he'd been coached to perform. When they left that afternoon, Brittany was already on her phone, presumably texting her wedding planner, her voice carrying back through my open door about unlimited budget and spare no expense. I closed the door and stood in my quiet house, the house I'd lived in for 42 years, the house where I'd raised Tyler, and I felt something cold settle in my chest. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't even anger yet. It was suspicion, a grandmother's instinct that something was terribly, terribly wrong. That night, I did something I'd never done before. I typed Brittany's full name into Google. Brittany Nicole Ashford, 26 years old, self-described lifestyle influencer and brand consultant according to her Instagram bio. I scrolled through her feed. Pictures of her at expensive restaurants, luxury hotels, designer shopping bags, always perfectly posed, always with different men in the background of older photos before Tyler appeared. But it was one particular photo that made me stop scrolling. A photo from 2 years ago. Brittany in a white dress, holding hands with a different man, standing in front of what looked like a courthouse. The caption read, "When you know, you know. Forever starts today with my best friend and soulmate, Marcus." I felt my blood run cold. I kept scrolling back further. There was another engagement announcement from 3 years before that, and another one from 4 years ago. 3 engagements, 3 different men, and in the comments of each announcement, I found something interesting. Friends asking what happened to, and Brittany never responding. I spent the entire night researching. I created a fake Facebook account and joined local Connecticut wedding groups, searched for her name, and found what I was looking for around 3 in the morning. A post from a woman named Jennifer in a group called Wedding Drama Support. Has anyone heard of a wedding planner scammer named Brittany Ashford? She was engaged to my brother 2 years ago, convinced my parents to give them $40,000 for a dream wedding, then called it off 2 months before the date, and disappeared. My brother was devastated. We never saw the money again. She claimed it was all spent on non-refundable deposits, but we think she just kept it. The comments under that post led me to 2 more similar stories. A pattern. Brittany would get engaged, convince the family to invest heavily in the wedding, then manufacture some dramatic reason to call it off, keeping the money. Sometimes she claimed the deposits were non-refundable. Sometimes she blamed the man for cheating or abuse. Always, she walked away with tens of thousands of dollars. I sat back in my chair as the sun started rising through my kitchen window. My 70-year-old hands were shaking, not from age, but from rage. This woman was running a con on my grandson, on my family, and Tyler had no idea. He was completely blinded by her beauty and charm, just like the others had been. But I wasn't going to confront her yet. I wasn't going to run to Tyler with screenshots and accusations, because I knew exactly what would happen. She would cry, claim these were all lies from jealous exes, say that people were trying to ruin her happiness. Tyler would believe her. He was in love, or what he thought was love. Young men in love don't listen to reason. They certainly don't listen to grandmothers who they'd start to see as jealous old women trying to control them. No. I needed to be smarter than that. I needed proof that even Tyler couldn't deny. And I needed to protect not just my money but my grandson's heart and future. The next morning, I called a number I'd found online. Northwood Investigations. A woman named Patricia answered, and when I explained my situation, she didn't sound surprised at all. She told me they handled cases like this more often than people would think. Romance scams, wedding fraud. It was apparently a growing business. She quoted me a price, $2,000, for a 2-week investigation. I'd never hired a private investigator in my life. I'd never imagined I'd need to. But I gave her my credit card information and told her everything I'd discovered. Patricia told me she'd start immediately. While the investigation was happening, I had to play along. Brittany started coming to my house 3 times a week to discuss wedding plans. She'd bring magazines, fabric samples, floral arrangement photos. She'd sit at my kitchen table and talk about Vera Wang dresses and destination bachelorette parties in Cabo, and all the while I'd smile and nod, and pour her tea and ask questions like I was the doting grandmother, excited for this blessed event. "We're thinking of having the ceremony at the Waterview in Monroe," she'd say, flipping through photos on her phone. "It's $35,000 just for the venue. But it includes the ceremony and reception space. Don't you think Tyler deserves the best, Grandma Rose?" I'd agree. Yes, Tyler deserved the best. I'd ask about the guest list, about her family. She always got vague when discussing her own relatives. Her mother was difficult and probably wouldn't come. Her father was out of the picture. No siblings. No close friends she wanted as bridesmaids, except for women she'd met through Instagram who lived in other states. Everything about her story had holes, but I kept smiling. I kept playing the role of the naive old grandmother, who was so grateful her precious grandson had found love and was willing to pay any price to see him happy. Tyler came by less frequently, and when he did, he seemed different, more distant, more stressed. One Sunday afternoon when he stopped by alone, I asked him how work was going. He was a software engineer, made good money, around $90,000 a year. He told me work was fine, but he seemed exhausted. "Are you sleeping okay, honey?" I asked. He rubbed his face. "Brittany wants to look at houses. She thinks we should buy before the wedding. She found one she loves in Fairfield. $700,000. That's a lot of money," I said carefully. "I know. She says her credit isn't great right now because of some identity theft thing from a few years ago, so the mortgage would have to be in my name." She showed me her credit report. Someone really messed her up. He looked at me then, and I saw something in his eyes. A flicker of doubt. "Do you think that's normal, Grandma? For someone to have bad credit at 26? This was my moment. I could have told him everything right then, but I knew if I pushed too hard, he'd pull away. So I just said gently, "I think you should take your time, sweetheart. There's no rush to buy a house. You're not even married yet." He nodded, but I could see the conflict in his face. Part of him knew something wasn't right, but he was suppressing that instinct, drowning it in whatever story Brittany had fed him. Patricia called me on day 9 of the investigation. "Mrs. Winters, I have your report ready. Can I come by tomorrow morning?" She arrived at 10, a professional woman in her 50s with a leather briefcase. She sat at my kitchen table and pulled out a folder that was at least 2 inches thick. "Everything you suspected is true," Patricia said. "Brittany Nicole Ashford has been engaged 4 times in the past 6 years, not 3. The first one you didn't find was when she was 20. Each time, she convinced the man or his family to invest in an elaborate wedding. Each time, she called it off and kept the money." Patricia showed me documentation, bank records she'd obtained through legal channels. Brittany had over $200,000 in an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. money she'd accumulated through these scams. But there's more, Patricia continued. She's currently in a relationship with another man. His name is Derek Paulson. He's 43, divorced, owns a chain of car dealerships in Massachusetts. I have photos. She spread them across my table. Photos of Brittany and this Derek man taken just last week, kissing outside a hotel in Boston, having dinner at an expensive restaurant. His hand on her lower back as they entered what looked like his condo. She sees him every Tuesday and Thursday, Patricia explained. Those are the days she tells your grandson she has yoga classes or meetings with wedding vendors. She met Derek on a dating app 6 months ago, around the same time she got engaged to Tyler. My assessment is that she's running 2 cons simultaneously. She's planning to marry whichever man produces the most money first, or possibly scam both and disappear. I stared at those photos, and the rage that had been simmering for 9 days reached a boiling point. This woman wasn't just stealing money. She was destroying my grandson's ability to trust, to love, to believe in human goodness. She was doing to him what had been done to at least 4 other men, leaving a trail of broken hearts and empty bank accounts. What would you recommend? I asked Patricia. You have enough evidence to go to the police. This is fraud. But prosecution can be difficult, and it would be traumatic for your grandson. My recommendation? Expose her publicly in a way she can't deny. Confront her in front of witnesses. Make it impossible for her to manipulate the narrative. An idea formed in my mind. A terrible, perfect idea. They're having their engagement party next Saturday, I said. At Tyler's apartment. 50 people invited. All his friends, co-workers, people from his life. She invited barely anyone from hers. Patricia smiled grimly. That would be the perfect venue. Over the next week, I prepared. I had Patricia's entire report copied and bound into neat packets. I had the photos printed in color, on high-quality paper. I practiced what I would say, how I would say it. I told Tyler I was so excited for the engagement party, and asked if I could make a toast. He seemed surprised and touched. Of course, Grandma. You're the guest of honor. You and Brittany's mom. If she decides to come, she's still not sure? I asked. Brittany says they're not close. Her mom is kind of toxic, apparently. Or maybe, I thought, her mom knows exactly who her daughter is. The engagement party was at 7 on Saturday evening. Tyler had rented out the rooftop common area of his apartment building. There were string lights, catered food, a bar. It was lovely, and it probably cost him $3,000 he didn't have to spare. Brittany looked stunning in a white cocktail dress, showing off her engagement ring to anyone who would look. A 2-carat diamond that Tyler had gone into debt to buy. She worked the room like a politician, laughing at jokes, hugging people she'd just met, playing the role of the perfect bride-to-be. I arrived carrying a large gift bag. Tyler hugged me, introduced me to his friends, made sure I had a drink and a plate of food. At 8 o'clock, he clinked his glass and called for everyone's attention. I just want to thank you all for being here tonight to celebrate with me and Brittany. This woman has changed my life, and I can't wait to make her my wife. Grandma Rose, who raised me and is the most important person in my world, wanted to say a few words. Everyone turned to look at me. Brittany was beaming, probably thinking I was about to give some sweet speech about how happy I was to gain a granddaughter. I walked to the center of the group, holding my gift bag. Thank you, Tyler. I did raise you from the time you were 12 years old after we lost your parents. I taught you about honesty, hard work, and treating people with respect. I also taught you to be careful who you trust, though I'm afraid that lesson didn't stick as well as I'd hoped. I saw Tyler's smile falter slightly. Brittany's expression shifted to confusion. Tonight I want to give Brittany a gift, I continued. Something very special. I reached into the bag and pulled out the bound reports, about 25 copies. I started handing them to people standing nearby. This is a complete investigation into Brittany Nicole Ashford's life over the past 6 years. In this report, you'll find documentation of 4 previous engagements to 4 different men. You'll find evidence that she scammed each of those families out of money for weddings that never happened. You'll also find photos, taken last Tuesday, of Brittany with another man named Derek Paulson. She's engaged to him too, apparently. Or at least, she's seeing him every week while planning a wedding to my grandson. The room went completely silent, except for the sound of pages turning as people opened the reports. Brittany's face drained of all color. This is insane. Tyler, your grandmother has lost her mind. She's making this up because she doesn't want you to be happy. But people were looking at the photos. Clear, undeniable photos of her kissing another man just days ago. Photos of her at a courthouse in a wedding dress with a different man 2 years ago. Tyler took a copy from his friend standing next to him. His hands were shaking as he flipped through the pages. I watched his face as he read, as the truth crashed into him like a wave. Denial, confusion, betrayal, devastation. Tyler, baby, please. Brittany reached for him, tears streaming down her face now. This is all a misunderstanding. Those photos are old. That report is fake. Your grandmother hired someone to sabotage us because she's jealous that she's not the only woman in your life anymore. These photos are dated from 4 days ago, Tyler said, his voice barely a whisper. You were engaged to someone else 2 years ago? 3 years ago? They were mistakes. I was young. I didn't know what I wanted. And this man, Derek? Tyler looked up at her, and I saw my sweet grandson's heart breaking in real time. You've been seeing him this whole time? A woman in the crowd spoke up. It was Tyler's coworker, Sarah, who I'd met once before. I think I saw her last month. I was in Boston visiting my sister, and I swear I saw her having dinner with an older guy. I thought it was weird, but I wasn't sure it was her. Another friend of Tyler's pulled out his phone. Derek Paulson. I'm looking him up. Yeah, here's his Facebook. Relationship status. Engaged to Brittany Ashford. Updated 3 months ago. Brittany started backing toward the door. You're all crazy. I don't have to listen to this. Actually, you do, I said calmly. Because I've also forwarded this entire report to the FBI's fraud division and the Connecticut State Police. What you've been doing is called wire fraud. And it's a federal crime. The investigator I hired used to work for the FBI. She knew exactly what evidence would be needed for prosecution. That stopped Brittany in her tracks. The tears stopped. The mask fell away completely, and what was underneath was cold and calculating. You spiteful old bitch, she hissed at me. You couldn't stand to see him happy. You wanted to control him forever. No, I said quietly. I wanted to protect him from a predator. There's a difference. Tyler was sitting down now, his head in his hands. His best friend Matt had an arm around his shoulders. Other people were still reading the report, murmuring to each other, looking at Brittany with disgust and disbelief. Brittany grabbed her purse. I'm leaving. Don't any of you try to contact me. The police will be contacting you, I called after her. Patricia already filed the report this afternoon. She ran then, her heels clicking on the concrete as she fled the rooftop. We could hear her all the way down the stairs. The party obviously ended after that. People filtered out quietly, many of them stopping to hug Tyler or squeeze his shoulder. Sarah stayed, and Matt, and a few other close friends. They sat with him while he processed the devastation. I sat next to my grandson and took his hand. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I'm sorry you had to learn the truth this way. He looked at me with red eyes. How long have you known? Since the night she asked for the money. Something felt wrong. So I looked into her. I hired Patricia the next day. You were investigating her for 2 weeks and didn't tell me? Would you have believed me if I had? Without proof? He was quiet for a long moment, then shook his head. No, I wouldn't have. I would have thought exactly what she said, that you were jealous or controlling. He squeezed my hand. I'm sorry, Grandma. I'm sorry I didn't see it. I'm sorry I let her manipulate me like that. You're not the first, and you won't be the last. These people are professionals, Tyler. They know exactly how to find vulnerabilities and exploit them. The only thing that matters now is that you're safe, and she didn't get your money or mine. Matt spoke up. Dude, you were about to buy a $700,000 house with her. She would have bankrupted you. Tyler nodded slowly. Yeah, she would have. And then she would have left, and I would have lost everything. We sat there for a long time that night, on that rooftop under the string lights, while Tyler grieved the relationship he thought he had, and came to terms with the reality of what it actually was. The legal aftermath took months. The police did investigate, and they found enough evidence to charge Brittany with multiple counts of fraud. She tried to run, but they caught her at JFK Airport trying to board a flight to the Cayman Islands, presumably to access that offshore account. She eventually took a plea deal, 5 years in prison, and restitution to her victims. The families of the men she'd scammed before Tyler all came forward. Together, we formed a strange little support group of people who'd been targeted by the same predator. Tyler had a hard time for a while. He went to therapy, which I encouraged and offered to pay for. He learned about narcissistic personality disorder, about love bombing and manipulation tactics. He learned to forgive himself for being fooled. About 6 months after the engagement party, he met someone new. Emma, a kindergarten teacher who drove a 10-year-old Honda and whose idea of a fancy date was the local Mexican restaurant. She was sweet and genuine, and when I met her for the first time, she hugged me and said, "Tyler told me everything about what you did. You're a hero." I'm not a hero. I'm just a grandmother who loves her grandson and wasn't about to let some con artist destroy his life. Tyler and Emma got engaged after a year of dating. A simple proposal in my backyard during a family barbecue. The ring was modest, and Emma cried tears of joy and said it was perfect. Their wedding was at a small venue in Mystic, cost $8,000 total, and was the most beautiful wedding I've ever attended because it was built on truth and genuine love. I'm 72 now. Tyler and Emma just told me last week that I'm going to be a great grandmother. As I sit in my garden on this beautiful spring morning, I think about how close we came to losing everything to Brittany's scheme. How different life would be if I hadn't trusted my instincts that day. People ask me sometimes how I knew. How did I figure it out when Tyler, who's smart and educated, couldn't see it? I tell them it's simple. I've lived 7 decades on this earth. I've seen patterns. I've learned that when something seems too good to be true, it usually is. I've learned that real love doesn't demand $50,000. Real love doesn't isolate you from your family. Real love doesn't have a secret boyfriend in Boston. But most importantly, I learned that protecting the people you love isn't controlling them. It's not being jealous or spiteful. Sometimes love means doing the hard thing, the unpopular thing, even when you know you might be hated for it in the moment. I didn't need Brittany to like me. I needed Tyler to be safe. And he is. He's happy, building a real life with a real partner, about to become a father. That's all a grandmother could ever want. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you enjoyed this story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep sharing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next story. With love and respect.